Have you ever heard of the phrase, the elephant in the room? Now, the elephant in the room is a phrase that's used to describe a situation where there's a problem. Everyone knows what the problem is, but no one wants to talk about or acknowledge the problem. Well, our society has a problem, and the problem is divorce. Divorce is a really challenging and difficult subject, but it has got to a point where it almost can't be discussed in any particular public forum, or particularly with a group of people that we might know. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the reason of some extreme cases which everyone's aware of. A case where someone's in a marriage and they've had to flee because the marriage is a dangerous place. They are under the threat of physical abuse. Well, of course, no one wants to see someone in a marriage where they're under the threat of danger. So we understand that. But then you've got the second category of people who are our friends or family members who have gone through a divorce. And as part of their divorce, we've journeyed with them. We've seen what's been going on. Maybe it wasn't their fault, or maybe they had to get out of a very, very unhappy relationship. And who are we to turn to our friends and family and say, no, you need to remain married. You have to live the rest of your life in unhappiness. Well, of course, we don't want to say that to people either. And then there's also the fact that divorce has now become so normalised in society, it's now just part of the deal. We almost privately see marriage now as simply a contract that may or may not work out. And even though we go to the wedding and we celebrate and we have all the declarations that this is forever, the truth is it's not. And for a lot of people, marriage is ending much, much quicker than they expected. And yet we have an elephant in the room. We have so much damage coming out of divorce, it's very difficult to even acknowledge this. For example, with children, I've been doing school chaplaincy now for over 13 years. I've been a school teacher for 30 years. And during that time, I've seen the impact of divorce on children. It's amazing when people tell me that children are resilient when it comes to divorce. That's simply not true. I've listened to enough kids in private over the past 13 years to tell you that they aren't resilient, they are simply compliant. They have no other option. And when I've sat down with children, I've given them the option to talk openly with the promise that their parents will not be given any information they share with me. These kids are far more hurt than they are leading on. And yet they have to carry it because they have no other option. And then you've got grandparents. These are ones who find themselves more alienated now from their grandkids because of custody battles, because of the sharing of kids going from one house to the next. They just don't have the same contact they used to have. And then, of course, you've got the people in the marriages themselves, the husbands or the wives, particularly the ones who have been left or abandoned, and there was nothing they could do to restore that marriage because the other person made the decision against them. And they walk out of that wounded, hurt, maybe cynical, and they often come out financially in trouble as well because the money is going down the tube. No, there is an elephant in the room with the divorce, and it is causing enormous pain and hurt. And yet to this elephant in the room, Christ has something to say. Now, divorce was as much a problem back in Jesus' day as it is today. It's not a new thing what we're seeing. This has been going on throughout all ages. But Christ's words are deeply confronting and incredibly uncomfortable to hear. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 31, "It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, causes her to become an adulteress. Anyone who marries the divorced woman commits adultery." Christ here is effectively saying when a husband and wife come together, they are brought together in spiritual unity. And it's a spiritual unity that can't be broken. It can certainly be broken by a contract where they can both leave each other, but the spiritual unity still remains. It's like a dad or a son, mother or a daughter. A dad and a son can have a fallout, a mother and a daughter can have a fallout and not see each other ever again, but that doesn't stop them being mother or daughter, father or son. In the very late 1990s, the satire comedy show South Park had an episode where one of the kids in the episode is called Stan, and Stan's parents separated. And in this discussion, Stan goes up to his dad and he says to his dad, "Dad, I want to now divorce my sister because she annoys me so much." And the dad says to Stan, "You can't divorce your sister. She's your sister." And Stan says to his dad, "Yes, but you divorced Mum." And the dad says to Stan, No, that's different. Your mum and me are different. We're not like that." And Stan says, "Yes, we are. You and Mum are family. Me and my sister are family. Why can't I divorce my sister?" And the dad doesn't know how to answer that. Because according to the child, Stan, he sees his mum and dad as family, a committed family. And even though they have divorced, they still remain to Stan mum and dad. They still remain husband and wife. And this is what Christ is coming back to. He says it was always meant to be about family from the start. Marriage was about two people coming together and developing a permanent spiritual connection that can't be broken until death. And this is where Jesus' teaching is really difficult to hold on to, particularly for people who've gone through divorce. So I want to put something to you. First of all, in John chapter 6, verse 66, there's an account where Jesus has a large following of people, but suddenly people are leaving him en masse. And the reason they're leaving, according to John, is because Jesus' teaching is too hard. I think for many people who've gone through a divorce who would be saying, well, hang on, Jesus' teaching is effectively saying I've now got 2 wives or 2 husbands, or I'm in some adulterous relationship. They say, well, I'm out. If that's the way it's going to be seen, I can't cope with that, so I'm out of here. Maybe for them, it is just a contract which can be broken at will. But Christ calls us back to the very starting dream. When 2 people go down that aisle, they do not go down that aisle seeing it as a contract, but as a dream that we could be together until death. And Christ is calling people back to that first promise, back to that first dream. The challenge, of course, is guilt. How do we deal with guilt on divorce? The cross of Jesus is the only way to deal with guilt. Jesus invites us to the cross and he says, see everything for what it is. Don't turn away and make excuses for it. Instead, face it for what it is. Come to me, be forgiven and be fully restored. And that's what Jesus promises us, the opportunity to be reborn, to start life all over again. Reboot yourself and move forward. And Jesus has this extraordinary promise he makes when we come to him. In the New Testament, the image we have of Christ's commitment is an image between a groom and a bride. Jesus becomes our groom and we become the bride of Christ. The answer forward is to live a life where Jesus is with us and he journeys us right throughout life. As the bride of Christ, Jesus gives us one extraordinary promise. He says, I will never leave you, ever.